Hey, it's Chris from Intentional. Today's topic I wanted to talk about in light of advertising is one that I've mentioned a couple of times, and it deserves to be spoken about after a couple of mentions because it's very much in the spirit of the term. It's a term that you're probably more familiar with, or if you like myself, would come across it mainly from superannuation, and that topic is compounding. So when we're talking about superannuation, we understand the compounding interest factor of it, the fact that I can put my, whatever it might be in my super today, I put my 9.5%, but it's also growing at that same time. So it's compounding year on year on year. A fun exercise if you're a nerdy person like myself, get an Excel or Google sheet and just drag across, have a look at your 9.5%. You can very quickly see how much you're going to end up with, which is, you realize the impact. You sort of have 10 to 20 years where not much happens, and then all of a sudden a lot happens. Now, this idea of compounding, I guess, not spoken that much about in advertising, or at least I haven't seen the impact of that. There was two different sources that made me really start thinking about this idea. The first was John Maxwell from a leadership point of view. He talks about the compounding impact for your whole life. He talks about the compounding impact of fitness, for example, which for any new parents out there, I'm 4 months into number 2, and I'm definitely feeling when I'm trying to go for runs, middle age is definitely on the horizon. And so you realize that compounding impact of not running for a couple of years and now trying to get back into it. So it's a habit I'm trying to create again. So before I get to 40s and 50s, that I've already built that base. And so there's that compounding impact of fitness. If you just tried for the first time to run or go to gym at 50, it's going to be a lot harder than if it's been a 20 or 30 year habit. The same is with finances. If you've been looking after your money for years and years and years, well, you're going to be fine. Reading, leadership, whatever it might be, there's a compounding impact to everything that we do in life. So that was one source. And the second source was reading How Brands Grow. So the sort of controversial for a digital marketer book to read. It's almost the antithesis of what a performance agency like ourselves had grown up believing, or at least mandating, and seeing how the platforms best responded. Obviously, being in 2019 and heading into 2020, we're in a completely different ball game. It was always the case. The digital was just the channel, but now the algorithms and the platforms are responding into that way as well, that you need to be able to feed the whole funnel. And it's in that idea of compounding that I wanted to talk today. Now, you may have seen some comments from myself on LinkedIn posts before talking about how return on ad spend can be a liar. The thing about return on ad spend is it's a fantastic measure when you're trying to drive sales. So if you're just trying to drive bottom of the funnel, or if you've got a brief from a client that says, look, we just want to maximize our revenue in this market for as long as that we possibly can, well, ROAS is a fantastic measure of that, and you can rely on the platforms to be able to show your ads to the audiences that are going to most do that. But there is a short-term nature to that because you're always selling. There's a limited compounding impact of that. It's going to be a similar ad I'm going to see when you first reach me, and it's going to be a similar ad that I see after I've been to the website. So the compounding impact is kind of, more than anything, actually exhausts or bursts very quickly, and that's why it is a short-term measure. A long-term focus is looking at, all right, if we understand the value of compounding and we understand the value of building brands and creating narratives and values that people can align with, well, then there's a value and an intrinsic value into building audiences, and particularly, what people would call a top of funnel or an awareness audience. Now, we've got our own point of view of how to do that, and I won't share that in these videos, but more than happy to run an audit if you're a client, or if you're another agency and you're interested, more than happy to have a chat about what we do. But this idea of continually building audiences is really the compounding impact that you can have in advertising. If you think about it, if you just say, like that example with going for a run at 50, if you just say one day, this audience has never seen my ad, I want to sell for them. Cool. There might be some people the same way I can do some weights or I can do some kilometers, but it's not going to be a long term. It's going to be a hard slog. And you might be able to get there, but the likelihood is you're going to burn out very, very quickly. And the same is with advertising. If you just reach people for the first time at top of funnel after not building up any story, it's going to be a lot harder to sell. And that short-term pain of building awareness has that compounding impact over time, just like those superannuation examples I said at the top. Right now, my super doesn't look like much. It doesn't look like I'm retiring on anything, But if you fast forward and drag that cell right across, as I said, 10 to 20 years, there might not be that much in 30 years. Now, building brands and doing advertising, we're not looking at 10, 20 or 30 years delay in terms of the impact of advertising, but there's definitely not going to be an immediate return. It is going to actually hurt your return on ad spend measure. So you can't have a single measure to look at that activity. But over the long term, continually showing up and telling your brand story and integrating your values into what you're doing has a compounding impact for brands who want to build a brand over the long term versus a short-term sales focus, which you might be able to get from looking at ROAS alone. Thanks.